Hello everyone, and welcome to our first of many math tutorial videos. Today we are going to learn about place value, and I want you to write this down. What is place value? Well, place value, quite simply, in my own words, is where the digit is located. Sorry if that's a little sloppy. Where the digit is located on a number. Okay, so that's what place value is, where the digit is located on a number. And it might sound confusing because you might be thinking, Mr. Morales, you're saying digits and you're saying numbers. Aren't those the same thing? Well, not in this case. In this case, you could have a number. So let's say we have the number 241. Well, 241 is a number, but it's composed of three different digits, meaning it has three different digits inside of it. It has the digit 2, the digit 4, and the digit 1. Yet, the number is 241. So place value is where the digit is located on a number. Make sure you write that down. I'm going to go, if you need to pause and write this down, that's totally fine. But I'm going to move on because I don't have a lot of time for these videos. Okay, I want to get it done within like less than 10 minutes. So let's say we have the number 5,823. Okay, well there's place value for this. And we're going to say the 3 is in the ones place. And that's usually represented by little tiny squares. So it'd be 3 squares. Okay, that's in the ones place. That's the place value of the 3. It's 3 ones. The 2, okay, and I'm going to put ones up top. Okay, it's in the ones place. The 2 is in the tens place. So that's going to be 2 long strips. That's how it's usually represented. And there's typically 10 in there. I don't think there's 10 in mine, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that just for the sake of time. So it's going to be 2 tens. So that's different. Even though the digit 2 is smaller than the digit 3, 2 in this case is bigger than 3 because that's 2 tens, which means that's actually 20, right? It's not just 2. Because the place where it's located is in the tens spot. And the 8 is in the hundreds spot. And that's going to be seen with 8. I'm not going to draw all 8, but it's going to be 8 squares like this. And that's going to be 10 by 10. Once again, these aren't 10 by 10, but for the sake of time, that's what it would look like. So the 8 is in the hundreds space. That's 800. And finally, you have the 5, which is in the thousands place. And the thousands are represented by a cube, okay? So each thousand is a cube, and it's usually like 10 by 10 in that too, which, once again, it's not, for the sake of time, I'm not going to make it exact. And that's really what place value is. So you should have learned this in 4th grade, but if you forgot, that's okay. We're going to just do a little bit of review. That's really what it is. And that's how it's represented. You get the thousands in the cubes, the hundreds in the flat squares, the tens in the strips, and then the ones are the little squares. Okay? And when you have place value like this, they relate to one another. And that's really the essential question that we're trying to answer today, which is, how can you describe the relationship between two place value positions? How do they relate to one another? How does the 3 relate to the 2, or the 3 relate to the 5, or the 8, and so on and so forth? So we're going to go over that. I'm going to go ahead and erase this part of it. Okay? Make sure you have that in your notes. You might want to rewrite it. I'm just not going to do that for the sake of time. And how they relate to one another is it goes in tens. That's typically the rule. Okay? And I'm actually going to write these rules down so you have them. Okay? I'm going to put them down right here. The first rule is when you move up, and you can draw an arrow if you want, up a place value, it is by tens, okay? Meaning you'd multiply it by 10. Let me give you an example. Let's just use the numbers we already have. 3 is in the ones place. To get it into the tens place, you would have to multiply it by 10. That's the same with the 2. To get the 2 from the tens to the hundreds, you'd have to multiply it by 10. And to get the 8 from the hundreds to the thousands, you'd have to multiply it by 10. Now that also means that the 3, if you wanted to get the 3 into the hundredths place, you don't multiply that by 10, but instead 10 times 10, which is 100. And if you want to get the 3 in the thousandths place, it'd be 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. So you can see how they relate to one another. They go in tens. Times 10 here, times 10 here, times 10 here. Okay? Furthermore, I want to go ahead and have the second rule. Make sure you pause that if you don't have that, okay? But let's have that number one more time. 5,823. Okay? And the second rule, which you need to make sure you write down, is when you go down place value, you divide by 10. So when you go up, you multiply. When you go down, you divide. Pretty straightforward, but let me show you what I mean by that. So if I'm going from the thousandths to the hundredths, I'm dividing by 10. Furthermore, if I'm going from the hundredths to the tenths, I'm dividing by 10. If I'm going from the tenths to the one, dividing by 10. Now, if I'm going from the thousandths to the tenths, well, I got to divide by 100 because 10 times 10, once again. And if I'm going here, I'm going to divide by 1,000 because 10 times 10 times 10. So whether you're going up or down, it's going to be in tens. Okay? And that's basically what I just wrote right here in this box. That's basically your notes or your rules, just super duper summarized. All right, so I'm going to give you 2 examples or 3 examples, and then we're going to move on. Or actually, we're going to be done. So let's say they're going to give you something like 500 is 10 times blank, 10 times a number. Well, what they're really asking you is, what, when you multiply it by 10, right, I'm putting the x for multiply, what times 10 equals 500? And you can do this a couple ways. You can say, okay, well, I know 500 divided by 10 is 50, so 50 times 10 is 500. Or you can look at the place value and say, okay, I know that it goes by tens. I have something that, since something multiplied by 10 is a bigger number, I have to go down because when you multiply it, it equals 500. So you know that the number is going to be less than 500. Right? You can't do 500 times 10 equals 500. It wouldn't work. So it has to go down. So we know that since we have to multiply and it has to go down, we need to look at our place value. Since it's going down by 10, all we do is move it down 1. So we know that the 5 would go instead of the hundredths, it would be in the tens spot, which means the answer is 50. Okay? So when they're asking you, 500 is 10 times what, or this number is 10 times what, you have to go down because the number is going to be smaller. All right, so make sure you have that and write that down as example number 1. Okay, that's an EX up there. Sorry if that's a little sloppy. All right, pause that or rewind it if you need clarification, but we're going to go ahead and do example number 2. And example number 2, it's going to ask you, it's going to say something like 900 is 1/10 of what? And this is basically the opposite now. They're going to be saying, okay, what is 1/10 of 900? And now you know that the number is going to be bigger because this 900 is only part of a whole bigger piece. So, whereas last time you had to look at the number and you had to go to the right, okay, this time you're actually going to see, okay, I have to move up by 10, I have to move up in the left. Right? The 9 has to move up to the left spot. So instead of 900, it's going to be 9,000. And another way to check that is to say, okay, 900 times 0.1, or no, I'm sorry, 900 divided by 10 is, no, my mistake. Saying 900 divided by 1/10 would equal 9,000. Okay, that's how you would do that. And dividing decimals is a little complicated right now, but just know that I think the easiest way to understand that is that the place value is going to change. It's going to move up. All right, we got one more example. And if you are having questions in this video, make sure you write your questions down and ask me tomorrow. because that will be the time to do it. The last thing you're going to be given for your examples is they're going to give you a table. And the table is going to be, they're going to give you a number. That's what this is, number. They're going to say this number times 10 and this number 1/10 of that number. Okay, and they'll give you stuff like, maybe they'll give you 10. And they'll say, okay, the number's 10. Well, 10 times 10, you just move the place value up to the right, right? 10 times 10, 100. 1/10 of 10, move the place value back to the ones place, it would just be 1. Right? Let's do a more complicated number. Let's do something like 900. Well, 900, if you're going to 10 times that, right? 900, you have to add another 0, which would make it 9,000. Okay? And 1/10 of that, you'd have to go back 1, which would make it 90. Right? 900, you'd go back right here. All right? Apologize if that's sloppy. And the last number, let's do one more number. Let's do 700. Well, 10 times 700, just add a 0, 7,000. 1/10 of 700, take away a 0, 70. So yeah, understand that place value is in tens, and with tens, that means it's going to be adding or subtracting zeros from it. Adding or subtracting the zeros. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, make sure you ask. Have a good one.